Good evening. Tonight's sunset story from the 24 Carat Buddha and Other Fables by Maxine Harris is The Pot of Misery. The publishing company is the Sidran Institute Press. The storms had been very bad 2 winters ago, and many people in the village had lost their homes, or their crops, or some of their farm animals, but no one had lost more than young Alina. Alina had been helping her mother prepare the evening meal when the first winds began to blow. Her 2 sisters were playing in the yard, and her father and older brother were out in the fields trying to bring the cows into safety. She only caught a momentary glimpse at the large funnel cloud before it swept into her yard and her home and everything she held dear. In an instant, everything went black, and when Elena woke up several hours later, her whole world had changed. Her home was gone, completely swept away by the force of the storm. Her mother and sisters lay crushed under the weight of a huge tree that had been carried from a neighbor's yard by the powerful winds, and her brother and father were missing, gone without any trace at all. At first, the other villagers marveled at Alina's survival and told her how lucky she was to be alive. But when they allowed themselves to realize the full extent of Alina's loss and the depth of her sorrow, they merely shook their heads and whispered to one another, "Poor Alina. How very, very sad to lose so much. Poor girl." As time went on, the villagers began to recover from their losses. They rebuilt their homes and plowed the fields once again. At harvest time, people danced and sang and drank strong cider, just as they had before the big black cloud had descended and destroyed so much of the village. Everyone began to recover and return to normal life, except Alina. She kept to herself and rarely spoke. She lived in a small hut she was able to construct from some scraps of wood and thatch that she gathered, and she did odd jobs for the other village women who occasionally needed someone to help with the cooking or sewing or tending of the children. Mostly she thought of her family and all she had lost, and she cried soft, lonely tears. At first, the villagers tried to console Alina, telling her that she was still part of their village family and she need not feel so all alone. But Alina only looked down and whispered a hollow, "Thank you." When they saw that their kind words had no effect on Alina's sadness, some of the villagers tried to offer helpful suggestions. "Why don't you grow a garden, Alina? You always had such a green thumb. Alina, you should move to the village on the other side of the lake where your aunt and uncle lived. Alina, I have a nice young man for you to meet. He will surely make you happy again." But to all these suggestions, Alina merely sighed, looked down, and said, "No, thank you." As more time passed and Alina remained sad and alone, many of the villagers began to worry about her. Besides, they did not like seeing someone so miserable all the time. A group of the village leaders met one evening to discuss what they should do to help Alina overcome her sadness. "We have tried every kindness," insisted one woman. "Alina's sadness is so deep, I'm afraid that it will never go away." "Nonsense," declared one of the council of elders. "There is always a remedy for despair. We must just think until we arrive at a solution. What if we come up with a plan and Alina rejects it, as she has all of our other attempts to be helpful?" If we come up with the right plan, Alina will not turn us away. She wants to be happy again, just as the rest of us do," said an old woman with a kindly face. "I think I may have a solution," said a tall man with a very long beard, who had been silent throughout the entire discussion. "I have heard stories of a wizard who lives in the mountains and spends his days forging metal pots with magical powers. Each pot has the power to contain whatever sorrow is placed inside of it. If we could get one of these pots for Alina, she could place her misery inside and be free of having to face her sadness and pain every day." "Does such magic really exist?" asked one skeptic. "It will be too difficult to find the wizard and ask him for one of the pots, even if they are as powerful as you say," cautioned another. "But we must try," said the leader of the group. "Alina's misery is too much to bear, and it will surely kill her if we do not do something to help." With those words, it was agreed that the man with the long beard would go into the mountains and seek out the wizard in his magical pot. Several weeks passed. There was no sign of the man who had gone in search of magic. But then one day, as the sun was about to set, villagers saw him returning down the side of one of the mountains, and in his hands was a large metal pot. The villagers rushed to the edge of the mountain and waited for him to descend the steep slope. "You have returned, my friend, and I can see from the large pot in your arms that you have been successful. Come and rest, and tomorrow we will present the pot to Alina and tell her of the plan to ease her sorrow." And with those words, the village elder welcomed the weary traveler home. The next morning, several of the village leaders went to Alina's hut and presented her with the magic pot. "My dear child," began the village elder, "many of us have been concerned with how sad you have been these many months since the great storm came and took away all whom you loved and who loved you. We have watched you mourn and have tried to ease your suffering, but until now we have had little success. Today we come with a magical gift, forged by the wizard who lives in the mountains. This pot has the power to contain all human suffering and despair. If only you will pour your anguish into the pot, this vessel will hold it for you." "Oh, gentle and wise sir," replied Alina, "how kind of you to try and ease my suffering. But my loss has been so great that I fear no magic will be powerful enough to help me." "Please try. You have nothing to lose," pleaded the man with the long beard who had gone in search of the metal pot. "As you wish," agreed Alina. And with that, she lifted the lid of the pot and wept 2 years of pent-up misery into the waiting vessel. When she replaced the lid, Alina noticed something quite remarkable. She felt better. For the first time since her loss, Alina lifted her eyes to the group of villagers surrounding her and smiled. As the days went on, Alina began to feel better and better. She gossiped with the other young women her age. She took long walks by the river and picked flowers. And she began to prepare the garden she had not had the energy to sow before. She even heard herself laughing out loud once or twice. But Alina began to grow curious about what had happened to her sorrow. Had the magic pot really taken it away? One evening, as she prepared for bed, Alina decided to have a look inside her pot. Her hand trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside the pot, she saw what she had feared. All of her sorrow and misery lay swirling inside. Alina quickly replaced the lid, and for several days after, she felt sad again. Slowly, however, her sorrow lifted, and she began to enjoy her life once more. Many months passed before Alina was again seized by curiosity to see what had happened to her misery. As she peeked inside her pot, she once again saw her misery inside, and again she felt sad. But this time, Alina was also perplexed. It had now been several months since she placed her sorrow in the pot, yet there it was, still swirling inside. It had not disappeared as she had hoped it might. Alina resolved to find the wizard who had forged the magic pot and see if perhaps she was doing something wrong, something that was preventing her pain from going away forever. She prepared herself for the journey to find the wizard and began hiking into the hills. When after several days of climbing she found the wizard, Alina presented her dilemma. "Oh, most powerful wizard, first I must thank you for the gift of the magic pot. It has indeed held my sorrow, and I am able to feel happy for the first time since my family was taken from me. But I fear that my misery is still inside the pot. It has not disappeared, and if I look inside, I can see my pain again, and I feel sad. What am I doing wrong that the pot has not made my anguish disappear forever? Dear Alina, come and sit by me and be comforted," said the wizard in a most gentle voice. "You have misunderstood the power of the metal pot. The pot has the power to contain your sorrow, so that you are free to live your life again. No power on earth is strong enough to make sadness and pain disappear forever." As she heard those words, Alina did indeed feel comforted, and she knew what she would do. She went down the side of the mountain to live her life, knowing that the large metal pot would always be there, and she also knew that from time to time she might again be tempted to look inside. The additional reading this evening: The Pot of Misery. Painful memories have a way of lingering long after we think we have put them to rest. At times, everyday events trigger a return to past hurts. Sometimes we intentionally revisit the past to see if old arrows still have the power to wound us. Often we search for some way to still the voices of despair and discontent permanently. We hope that through meditation, therapy, or some type of self-exploration, we can banish the memories of the past forever. One of the hardest lessons to learn is that the demons remain part of us forever, forming an essential part of who we are and who we have become. Just as our strengths and our triumphs are there to sustain us, our traumas are there to remind us of how far we have come. We can, however, learn how to tame and contain the worst of any nightmares. A caged beast, after all, may still growl occasionally, but it no longer has the power to attack and cause harm. Thank you for listening.